This session is on learning how to foil the outside edges and cap the outside edges of a Suncatcher so that we have a strong edge. We want the time we've spent doing Suncatchers to be worth something, so we want our Suncatchers to have a good strong edge around them. The foil is on, and what we do now is just a real fast tin on the surface, both surfaces of our copper foil. You always use your flux. And with a little bit of solder, we're just going to cap this side of our foil. Don't use a lot of solder. Just a little bit goes a long way. People really get in trouble by trying to fix things by adding solder, a little bit of solder. Then we'll turn it over and we want to cap this other side. You can tell I'm using just very little amounts of solder for this. Looks like I'm just barely putting any on. This is called tinning. We're tinning the copper. Now once both sides of the copper are tinned, the benefit is that when we start ready to lay our solder on this edge, the solder will actually flow now on both sides of that piece of copper. So we want a little bit of flux, make sure we've got our edges fluxed. And it doesn't hurt to go ahead and flux everything so you don't have to stop in midstream. And I'm going to make a solder snake is what I call it, so that I can take a little bit of solder at a time with my tip and not have to have 3 hands to do this. Couple of very important things when you get ready to solder this edge. We want this edge to be absolutely perpendicular to our surface, and we want it to be even with our surface. When it comes to solder, gravity is our friend. So we want to make sure that when we're ready to lay the solder, it will flow where we want it to flow. A little bit of solder at a time, and we're just going to tap it right on top of that edge. You can see how the copper foil is accepting it and just making a pretty little bead. Be patient because you need this solder to cool. So don't move it around too quickly or it'll keep moving. You can see this edge is a curved edge, so I want to watch that solder where it goes. Little bit of solder. The big mistake people make on this is they will try to use too much solder, and then you've got solder splashing down the edges. Got to keep your hands out of the way, and a little bit of solder is the trick. The points are a little tricky because you do have that edge that can go around, so just be patient, give it time to cool. Okay, this edge is a nice straight edge, so once I get it positioned horizontal and perpendicular, or however that geometry is, should work pretty easy. Once again, little bits of solder. You can see this solder. Just watch the gravity of it. There's that little tip. I'm using the very end of my chisel tip because that gives me the space I need to just lay it right there where I want it. And it's also a more controllable heat. This is a little bit older foil, so it's a little stubborn. Okay, keep your fingers out of your way and use little bits of solder. See how that solder just rolls on. Okay, I'm going to turn to use this little curved area. So it's a curve. I'm going to have to watch my solder. Once again, another tip. Oh, that's easy. And I need to fix that top tip. Had a little bit of trouble with the solder up there. There we go. Let it cool. Okay, I'm going to catch this edge now. Little bits of solder. That solder is not only on this flat surface, but it's actually beading on either side of the piece. So it's a cap. It looks like what you would use if you were making a capped lead, but now we're making that cap with the solder. And that's a little blobby, so I'm just going to move it on down. See how it moves on down? Pretty cool. Or hot. Alrighty. We have this little section in here, a little harder to get to, and it's curved, so we want to make sure that we are keeping it straight up and down. Just be patient. Watch your way the glass is sitting so that your solder will go where you want it to go. Oh, did you see that solder move around? It will move around. Okay, I think I've got all the edges done here. So now what we want to see is that we have capped our solder edge. There's a bead on top, and then it has actually flowed on both edges. Both sides of our copper foil have a nice bead on it. I can feel that bead on there. I do not feel flat copper. I feel a nice bead. And this is going to make my edges of my Suncatcher durable. In other words, now the Suncatcher is not going to fall apart, and it certainly won't, the foil won't come off of these edges now. It's a nice, strong cap. And that's the way to do it.